Welcome back. So for this video, I'm going to be going over how to add highlights and shadows and really just any of those major details that you need to add. Quick recap. So you should have created your black outlines first. So if we look over in my layer section, I have my main template. At the very top, I have my black outlines. Looks super creepy if I take those off. Ooh. Put those back on there. And then I have separate groups for each of my base colors. So I have my facial features, and then like the iris base and the lip space, and the white of the eye base. I have my clothes and accessories, which has the glasses, the shirt, and my shirt. And you'll notice I took a little bit of liberty with the colors on those. I did not use the eyedropper because I wanted to like have a little bit of fun with it. So I made my glasses purple. I changed our shirt colors so that they're a little more simple colors, white and light blue, just so it's not taking away from the rest of my, like the actual portraits. And even the eyes, like the color of the iris, I changed because on my actual template and on my original photo, the colors were really dark and in shadows. And so I decided I wanted to make it a little more vibrant. And so I have blue eyes. My daughter has like a greenish brown eye. And so I decided to go with those kinds of colors instead. And so feel free to make those adjustments, but you can see I have each of these little sections ready to go. And so now I am ready to start adding to these highlights and shadows areas, and if I have any other details that I want to add. So I'm going to go ahead, and I think hair is one of those that's a little bit trickier to add details to. So here, if I open up my hair folder, I have Emmy's hair base, and then I have my hair base, so that I can work on those separately. So Emmy's hair right now is almost blending in with her skin just because of the color that I picked out for that. And so I want to make sure that I'm adding lots of highlights and some shadows in there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a layer. And I'm going to call this one Emmy's hair. I'm going to do highlights and shadows together. You can separate those out, and there's some reasons why that might be helpful, but with this being most of our first portrait, I think just having like a separate one with highlights and shadows works just fine. All right, and so with that, I am now ready to start adding some highlights and shadows on here. Notice that layer is above where Emmy's hair is. If I did it underneath, then we wouldn't be able to see any of the work I'm about to do. So make sure that those are in the right order. I'm going to grab my eyedropper and I'm going to grab the color of her hair. And so I have a couple options. I can either work with that color, open it up in my color picker down here, and like adjust it. So that is one option. Another option is just to make it so I don't see her hair base anymore and to pull from the original. So, and sometimes this works. Sometimes I go ahead and take some liberties with that as well. So I pulled a color with my eyedropper. I'm gonna go ahead and try it out. And it's really not that different. So I think I'm gonna make this the shadows, and I'm gonna pull it, and I like to pull kind of across so that if you go just straight down or straight up, basically all you're doing is adding straight black or straight white to your color. If you go more at an angle, then you can especially towards like the main color over here, then you're gonna saturate it a little bit more, and it's gonna be a little more vibrant. So I'm gonna go down a little bit that way. And notice I have my current one, and so you can see how I'm like adjusting it. I then can play with what brushes I'm using. So sometimes you might wanna just keep like the normal brush, but for hair in particular, I wanna make sure that I have a nice variety of like strokes. And so a good little trick is to use a brush that looks and mimics hair and whatever kind of hair you're trying to create. Because I know some of you might have like curly, like more coarse hair. Some of you might have more straight hair. For this one, I know I have I have to find it. There we go. I have these in here, Kyle's letters. These are part of the, let's see. You know what, I'm gonna do the ribbon one instead. These are some that I downloaded for free. And so, and I think these are in like the basic like art download one. So if you don't have that, that's okay. But here it is, and you can see, oh no, this isn't what I wanted. I'm gonna undo. You can see how I'm just testing these out. There, that one has a little bit more to it. But I think there's still one that would work better, and maybe it was what I originally had. There we go, split. I don't want the wide one though. Notice how I just test it out and then I undo a lot. This is probably what you're gonna be doing to find one that works well. That's not bad. All right, let's give it a shot. So pick one out, still go back and adjust the size. I also like to pull and play with that opacity. And then go ahead and zoom in and start creating some of those shadows. And so I'm just going in and I'm mimicking. Yeah, actually, I kind of like this. I'm mimicking some of these shapes. Notice I'm using my stylus for this. It's going to be super helpful. Also notice I can go right behind those glasses and not even have to worry about it. I'm going to add some more details on there. Now, another thing that you can do is you can actually get rid of the base. So if you're not sure where to add like shadows or highlights, if you get rid of the base while you're working on your highlights and shadows, you can just color in just those darker areas. And so sometimes that can be pretty helpful. And then pull that base back on and see how it looks. So I know I like to do that a lot, and I like to kind of check on the base. So after you do that for a little bit with your shadow, make sure you make a little mark, not here, but on the palette. There we go. And then come back and let's create a highlight. So I'm going to pull that base back. I'm going to mimic that main color of the base, and then I'm going to adjust it, and I'm going to pull it a little bit more up this way. And then give it a try. That actually looks pretty good. Once again, I can go back and I can get rid of that base and notice, okay, so there's like some strong highlights right in here. There's kind of a highlight there. Notice I'm pretty loose with it. You might prefer to be a little more careful. I like that last line was kind of wild though. But I like it kind of sketchy. And so have fun with it. You can also then go back and adjust the size of your brush again. And do some like smaller ones, and you can then also just go back and adjust like the brush itself. But you can see as I back out, up, I'm now starting to get some better details in here. As I'm working on this, I'm thinking I might even need like a few more, add one, like one kind of highlight and one kind of shadow. You can always step that up further. And so if I want to do that darker shadow, I can just pull on that shadow I had before, pull it down even more. Don't be afraid, because if you don't like it, you can always just erase it. Go back to my brush, and I'm gonna get rid of that hair base, and I'm just gonna notice like over here is pretty dark. Down here is pretty dark. And so when I pull that hair base back on, I notice I get like a little bit darker parts. Not super noticeable right now. If I'm worried that it's not like showing up quite enough, I can either darken that color, or I can also up the opacity as I'm doing it. And so that will make it a little bit more obvious. I think I need to darken it though. I think these tones are just too similar. Don't be afraid to play. There we go. Now I'm getting like a little bit better. Yeah. All right. So we get the idea. Keep playing with that. That's what you're going to do for all of your hair. When you get to some things like the skin, you're going to want more of a soft brush, probably more of a like round soft brush. And you can set that size up quite a bit. Make sure your hardness is set all the way down. I definitely would have the opacity down quite a bit. And then, so I'm gonna pull up to where my skin is. I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the hair. So I'm gonna open up my skin folder. I'm on Emmy right now. So I'm gonna add a layer. And I'm gonna do Emmy, skin, highlight, and shadow. All right. So now, and a little trick is if you use the little brackets, you can increase the size a little bit easier. You can also use a small bracket to decrease. So there's a little shortcut. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take a eyedropper of her skin, and then I'm going to deepen that just a little bit. And go back here. And I'm also going to get rid of the base, because I definitely think it's very helpful to be able to see where those shadows are on here. And so I noticed that there's kind of a shadow up top. I also can then pull that back down, put an eraser, make my eraser a lot bigger, and go back and kind of erase in certain areas. That eraser right now, the opacity is up all the way, and it's like a hard brush. And so notice that there's like an obvious outline. I don't want that. I want it to be more subtle. And so I'm going to go back, and I forgot to adjust the eraser. There we go. Make it a little more subtle. Notice that like highlights are here. And kind of adjust some of those little highlights that I would see. So that when I go to add my base, I should be able to see just where those shadows are. Okay, so if I go back, I'm gonna pull this down quite a bit. And I notice that there's like a shadow right in here. And so I'm just kind of going over some of those main parts. And then kind of testing it out and cleaning it up. But I'm going to make this a little bit cleaner and softer. Then I'm going to go back, and I would continue with this quite a bit more, but now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some highlights as well. And so I want to make sure that you see that process. So I'm going to grab that main skin color. I'm going to brighten it up a little bit, lighten it up a little bit. Go back. I'm gonna increase the size of this, and I'm really going to look at my original one, and I'm gonna take this off and I'm gonna see where are those main highlights. So I can see like a pretty good highlight right here. And so I'm going to brighten this up a little bit. Maybe pull it down just a little bit. And then let's kind of see how it's looking. So it's pretty subtle. But I'm starting to get there. I can go back and kind of blend some of this a little bit more with some different tools. I also can go back and I like to add just like a little bit of a rosy tone. And so what I'll do is I'll keep it where it is, but I'll just pull it into more of like some pinks or some more like rosy. I'll make sure my opacity is down. Make sure my softness is up all the way. And I'll add just like a little bit. That's kind of like, maybe like she got into my makeup. So let's make it a little less of that color. A little more into like the oranges. There we go. There we go. That looks better. So notice you got it, just kind of play with it a little bit. And keep playing until you start to get some dimension. The goal is that I should be able to make out that this is like a three-dimensional image. I don't want to be able to see this like flat base like there is here. Another thing that you can do is you can go back in, you can add some details to things like the glasses. And so like the shirt, maybe I don't need like a pattern or anything. So maybe I just do some highlights and some shadows on the shirt based on what my template shows. But for like the glasses, I could have a little bit of fun and add maybe like some tortoise shell or some different details on there. I could play with different brushes for this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a layer above the glasses, and I'm going to call this glasses design. So I make sure I know what it is. I'm going to create a color that I like for it. And so I think I want to do like a darker version of this. Cool, cool. I also am going to go up here and I'm going to play with the brush. I think whenever you're doing any kind of pattern, that's when it's kind of fun to test out some of these different wild brushes. This is kind of cool. Actually really like this one. And so what I can do is I can just paint this on, and then I can go back and grab my eraser and erase around the edges. Now my eraser's still, like the hardness is all the way down, so I'm gonna like pop that hardness back up so I get a clean edge. And then I have this really cool pattern on here. Actually pretty fun. And by zooming in, I can do a little bit better job using my bracket to pull that down. My stylus, I'm a little bit faster than when I try and use my mouse. I also might go ahead and add like some highlights and some shadows on here as well. So for that, I could go in, take my original color, line it up quite a bit, go back in, and I'm basically doing what I did with the skin. So I'm going to go back to just like a basic brush. Notice all the previous brushes I've used are in here, and so that's really nice. I can go back and pull on those and adjust that size down. And if I get rid of this, I think I'm going to have to get rid of quite a bit to be able to see my template again. There we go. I can see where those little highlights are. And so now I can go back in and I can kind of recreate. That line was kind of wild. Some of these little highlights here. Now I have my opacity up all the way. I don't love that when I'm doing a highlight. There we go. Much better. Find where those little highlights are. Go back, erase up your edges, which I never finished doing over here anyways. And then when I go and add my glasses, now I'm starting to get some really good dimension on there. I also notice that I have some really bright highlights right on the glasses. So now might be a good time to add some of those in. So that when I go back and I add my skin, now those little brighter highlights are showing up as well. And so you can see how the more you do this, the more details you add, the more highlights, the more shadows, the more you're looking back at that template and you're getting ideas, the more just personality you're gonna get out of your portrait. And you can take liberties like changing the glasses, like changing the colors, like playing with the shadows, making them more soft or making them more like saturated. That's totally up to you. But now once you get in the habit of using, like creating a layer every time you create new highlights and shadows, and playing with your brushes and getting comfortable using some of those shortcuts, like undo is probably the #1 shortcut, then you're going to get better and better, and hopefully you'll get some really cool details on here. So for this one, and here's one that's finished, so you can kind of see. It'll let me. Here, I'm gonna pull this one back, and I'm gonna get my hair back on there. You can see what I've done here. But here's one that's totally done using these same processes. So you can see there's some obvious little highlights, there's shadows and things. There's like a little bit of rosiness there. There's some details in the eyes. And so if I zoom in, you can see I created some little details. I did a little different pattern on there. Those are the things that I'm looking for, and those are the things that are going to make it pop. So make sure you take time this week to continue to do those things and develop them. I can't wait to see what else you've done, and let me know if you have any questions.